except those who stick to the truth and those who have patience. The people who stick to the truth, who do good, who believe, and who have patience. And this is a month of patience. This is a month of doing good. This is a month of believing in those things which you can't even see. Because those are often the most beautiful things. Those things that our mind cannot comprehend. We put aside our intellects, put them behind, and just look at the beauty that is beyond comprehension, beyond our understanding. And one of those things that for us is because of our lack of knowledge, it's something that is understandable to us, and it's been made easy for us. We haven't actually made any effort. We haven't done any amal salih, any good actions in regards to understanding and attaining the understanding of something which has been made understandable to us, although in its reality it is beyond our comprehension. That is the Quran, the word, the verbatim word, the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in itself is beyond our comprehension. The speech of Allah is beyond our minds, it's beyond our understanding. Yet the Quran in its message has been made easy for us to understand. Allah Himself tells us in the Quran that it is something that He has made it easy for us to understand. But easy doesn't always mean simple. And the Quran is a complex message. The Quran is layered in its approach, benefiting in so many different ways, helping in so many different ways. And it's a very, very complex message, a very complex kalam of the Rabbul Alameen. And it requires some amal salih. It requires some time, some well-valued time, without which every human being is in loss. It requires some well-valued time in which you do good actions, amal salih, to understand and give the due right to this Quran. And the right of the Quran isn't just to be read, but it's to be loved, it's to be understood, and it's to be acted upon. The Quran we have had, and most of us, in our midst, in our shelves at a time. Every home was without a Quran. Now we say every palm is not without a Quran. Every person who has a palm and has a phone within that palm has the access to the Quran in any language he wants to. Just today, my teacher, Maulana Chari Yazuddin, sent me a message regarding the great scholar Maulana Taha Quran Sahib, who had come for a lecture tour to the UK. And I saw some pictures regarding the Ziyaad that he'd done in London and around those areas, and he had been to a cemetery where he visited the grave of none other than Muhammad Mahmoud Pickthorn, the person who is attributed with the very first English translation of the Quran, who led every other English translation that came after it, they built upon his. That individual. But now we come to a time where even in English, we can almost choose which type of English do you want. Do you want the archaic English, the old English? Do you want the new English, the modern English, the simple English? We can almost have, even based on our location, whether it's English, British English, or American English, or Canadian English, or Australian English, we can find a translation that suits us. We have translations that are done by scholars, translations that are done by readers. That's the time we have come to. The Quran has become more accessible than ever before. Yet it seems that the more easier the Quran is being made for us, the further away we are going from it. A very scary hadith that gives hope but also brings fear to us. That tells us, when our beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that Al-Qur'anu hujjatun laka aw alayka, that the Quran can be a hujjah, a witness, or a proof, or a testimony for you or against you. And whilst this gives us the ultimate hope that when the Quran that we recite, when it comes on the Day of Judgment as a witness for us, be it in our grave or be it on the Day of Judgment, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will never ever reject that Quran that we recited. That recitation of the Quran that we did, when it comes as a testimony for us, it is almost a guarantor to success, towards attaining the rahmah of Allah and entering Jannah, and to save yourself from the dread of the hellfire. But at the same time, Al-Qur'anu hujjatun laka aw alayka, it can also be a witness against you. The very Quran that you recite can be a witness against you. What does that mean? If it is a witness for you, it's a guarantor for success. If it's a witness against you, it's a guarantor for what? For destruction. Allah protect us all. The very Quran that you recite, we have no idea whether we are earning Allah's pleasure by it, whether we are doing a due right to this Quran, or whether we are upsetting the Quran, whether we are hurting the Quran. whether we are being of those who the Quran is hurt so much by us that it will be a testimony against us. Ma'adallah, may Allah protect all of us from that.
Ameen.
At any capacity.
Ameen.
When you see the Quran staying there as an app in our app drawer that is never opened, or that is in the bottom of the list of the most used apps, or whether we see it as a physical mushaf that is in our physical drawers, that is gathering dust right at the back that has never been touched for 11 months, what sign do we get? Is that Quran going to be a witness for us or against us? Or that Quran that you recite every day as a menial task, as a subsidiary task, you simply open it, just read a few verses because you have to, so that you've just ticked off a box, and you don't even recite it in the way it should be recited. You don't even make an effort to recite it in the way it should be recited, and you don't even try to understand it. You don't even try to act upon it. So much so that many a times, and I've seen this again and again and again, and unfortunately at one time, because of my own wrong, because of my own evil, because of my own laziness, I became a victim to this as well. When you see a non-Muslim who doesn't even believe in the Quran tell you about a verse of the Quran which you don't even know, even though growing up going to madrasa or going to your daily recital, you probably recited that verse 10, 15, 20 or 100 times, but you didn't even know that verse existed, and a non-Muslim is telling you that verse existed, be it in a positive way or a negative way. He could tell you in the positive light that your Quran is so beautiful, it says this, and you didn't even know. Or he'll say your Quran says this in a negative light and it's not even true, but you can't even defend it because you don't even know where that verse comes from or where it's been taken out of context from, even though you've recited that same verse 100 times. That's the state we're in. And it's sad to say that our ummah at this moment has individuals, as an ummah at large, how many of us can actually say that we even give 10% of the right of the Quran? We don't. But yet the ashamed thing to be is that when we go to bayans, when we go to lectures, when we listen to the seerah, and we hear about these individuals in the history of Islam who opposed the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who opposed the Quran, people like Walid ibn Mughira, people like Abu Jahl, people like Aqnas ibn Shuraik, these people who we will hear and we will say, those guys are so bad. We look down upon them, saying these are the enemies of Islam. And we thank that Allah that we are not amongst them. We have a sense of negative feeling towards their actions. And we think, look how low those people went to go against the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yet, it shames us to say that those very people who would put their fingers inside their ears so that they wouldn't hear the voice of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam reciting the Quran, those people who would make loud noises so that they could try and dampen the sound of the Quran, those same people unfortunately understood and appreciated the Quran more than we do. How much of a shame is it that those people who we look down upon appreciated the Quran more than us? You have the personage of Abu Jahl, who is known as Abu al-Hakam, the wise, the father of wisdom. In Arabian tradition, you would be called the father of something as though because you're the possessor of that thing. You're the possessor of that quality. He was known as Abu al-Hakam, the father of wisdom, meaning the possessor of wisdom and intellect, because he was seen as someone who would always flaunt his wise attitude, his intellect. Yet in one night he will become Abu Jahl because of his actions. And we will see him as the Fir'aun of our ummah. Yet that person, along with two other people, one of which is known as Aqnas ibn Shuraik, will be hiding outside the house wherein in the dark depth of the night, wherein there's no street lights, there's no bright light. You can't tell a person who's next to you in that depth of dark night. He is hiding outside to listen to what? To listen to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite Quran. And in that depth of darkness, he accidentally bumps into another one of the enemies of Islam who is also listening to the Quran. And then he swears, because he knows that his izzah, his honor, that he claims to be against the Quran, that this Quran is false, etc., etc. He claims to be against it, and yet he is the one listening to it. So he swears with this person, saying, look, let's cover each other's honor. Let's not tell anyone that this happened. And let's take an oath, we will never come back here again. But night 2 comes and he comes back, he can't take it. He has to go back and listen to that Quran. And he gets caught again. And a third night happens, until eventually they have to take an oath on their fathers, on their mothers, on their idols, and never ever return. And at this point, on the 4th night, His companion who was listening with him, his heart is yearning to listen to the Quran. The same way many of us can't wait to see the next episode of our TV shows. He's waiting to say, I want to listen to tonight's episode of the Quran. So he goes to Abu Jahl and he says, we've been listening to it for the last 3 nights. What do you think? Do you think it is the truth? And now look at the response from a person who died thinking he was doing something good by opposing this Quran. What does he say? He gets almost angry and he says, oh, you stupid. That's what he's trying to say to him. Of course it's the truth. How could it not be the truth? He finds it, he's annoyed and frustrated at a person who questions the fact that is it the truth or not. That's the Quran. He understood it better than us. He defended the Quran's truth in front of another enemy of Islam. Yet we who read it every day, we can't defend that. We don't know what words to use. We don't feel frustrated when someone says something against the Quran because we don't even know what the Quran is. And then we wonder which side of the hadith we're on. Hujjatun laka aw alayka. Is it for you or against you? Is it for me or against me? Ma'adallah. We make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the Quran something which is for us all. But if we want the companionship of the Quran on that day, we have to give it our companionship on this day. Because if it's going to be on a side and forgotten in this world, then no doubt the Quran is going to forget us on that day. And if we try to give lip service to the Quran, what kind of a witness is it going to be for us? We have this beautiful month in which we're reminded that this is the month of the Quran. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه. It is revealed in this month, the month of Ramadan. The Quran itself tells you when it is revealed. This is the month in which the Quran was revealed. This is the month in which we have to remind ourselves what the Quran is and whether we evaluate our life and our relationship with the Quran. This Quran is that same verbatim word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can change hearts in 1 single second. Even without understanding it. Just by an open heart. We hear in the hadith of people who will read the Quran, but it won't go beyond their throats. And the Quran isn't something that we have to perfect in order to understand it, in order to get its fruits. It just requires an open heart, real love and dedication and an effort. Because by Allah, if we give those things, Allah will open our heart to the Quran. Allah will open the Quran to us. We will see the miracle of the Quran. If we were to ask a person, what is the miracle of the Quran? We hear everyone say, the Quran is the miracle of miracles. But none of us can give the right answer. What is the miracle of the Quran? The main miracle of the Quran, what is it? We don't know the answer. But one of the beautiful things of the Quran is that one of its miracle is that it has no one miracle. It is a different miracle for every single person that opens its heart to it. Every person who approaches the Quran with an open heart and an effort to learn it, to appreciate it, to love it and to act by it, to understand it, the Quran will affect him in a unique way. Almost as though the Quran reads you, you don't read the Quran. When you open your heart to it, even if it's the progress that you make, where in 10 years you only decide or able to understand one word of the Quran, or you can only decide one word of the Quran in the way it should be, then in that one word can be your entire salvation. That one word could be the witness for you on the Day of Judgment, for you and not against you. That one word could be the reason Allah opens your heart to the Quran, to become those who, when you stand in Traweeh, when you make the salam, you don't ask, is it 14 or 16? You're wondering, I wish it's only the first 2, because I want to listen to more Quran. You'll be like the Sahaba, who when they are standing behind the Hafiz or the Qari and listening to the Quran, they're on a journey. It's like they're wearing a virtual reality headset at that moment. They don't see anything else around them other than what the words of Allah are saying. If you're talking about a miracle or an incident or a story, you feel like you're in the story. You're immersed in the words of Allah. You don't even know what's going on around you. That can happen from one word which you try to understand properly with its real depth and love that one word and recite that one word correctly. That's what can happen when you make an effort to learn and recite the Quran properly. In this month, we can try to recite the Quran as much as we can. But recite it properly. Don't recite it just, don't do that. Because you are making a mockery of the words of Allah. You're making a mockery of the words of Allah. The Arabic language is such a subtle and delicate language that one letter can make the world of difference. a surah, an example, a surah that we all know and love and recite. The surah of Surah Ikhlas. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. That one, qul, the very first word, if that first letter isn't recited correctly, if it is recited with the qul, with the qaf, then it means say. When Allah says say to who? To our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That command, that huwa Allahu ahad, He is Allah the one only. But you take that same qaf and turn it into a kaf and say qul huwa Allahu ahad. You're saying eat. And I don't even want to say the rest. Because of one letter. But you try to perfect that one letter. Just make an effort until you get that qaf perfect and read it properly. Even if it takes you a few seconds longer. You might not read the whole Quran like that. But what you did recite, that quality you know, that will inshallah be a witness for you. Whereas the whole Quran that you read, that can be a witness against you. On a lighter note, I myself am a Gujarati. And I know that one of the biggest contributions that the Gujarati world has given to the Muslim Ummah is to misrepresent many of its words. Just today we had a beautiful person who we love and respect who was giving a announcement after the Salah regarding an appeal for the Janaza requirements in a particular country. And he stood up and said, I am now appealing for the Zanaza requirements. And many of our family members who come from places like Yorkshire or from back home, they often say Jazakallah, or I need to do wuzu, or waju, even worse. So our Gujarati fellow members are those who have contributed towards the Muslim Ummah when it comes to changing the words of every language. It's not just Arabic for that matter. If you've ever heard any of our parents speak, if they're from back home, they won't say, can you take that thing out of the cupboard? They'll say, Kabad mati kholi? And they say, what the heck is kabad? But that's how they misrepresent the words. Tuwal, like my brother just said. A towel becomes a tuwal. Yeah? So in the same way, there's a joke of a Maulana who is teaching a class. And this class is a class of Asian, Indian, Gujarati type of people. And he's teaching them how to recite the kalima first and foremost. So he starts off, and as Gujaratis will know that one very difficult letter for us in the Arabic language is the letter Sheen. We just can't pronounce it. Sheen always becomes Seen, and Seen always becomes Sheen. So when this Ustad is teaching them, he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I'm fed up of this. Tomorrow you're going to practice all night. When you come back tomorrow, you better be saying Ashhadu and not Ashhadu. Class is finished here. Tomorrow, promise me every one of you is going to come back and say Ashhadu. So they replied, Ustad, inshallah kosis karhu. And he realized straight away, they're not getting anywhere. Smack on the head. But these people, I've seen people like this, who can't pronounce the Ashhadu, but yet they are trying to recite the Quran properly. They are trying to recite the Quran properly. People like them, when they make an effort, that one effort that Allah is taking from them, that they are trying to pray the Quran better, even if it sounds a lot more different to what it should be, Allah will accept them for that one effort that they're making. But for us, who have our life ahead of us, who have the chance to go and perfect the language, we have no excuse. A lot more is required from us. We have so many opportunities, none of us have an excuse. We have so many opportunities and chances now, in whatever way and medium and time that suits us, to learn the tajweed of the Quran properly and recite it properly. Listen to the Quran properly with the full attention. Don't just make it a CD that plays in your car. You don't even know when it started and when it ended. Listen to it properly. Recite it properly. Or if not, make an effort. Die trying. You can start now when you're 24, 25, 26, 30 and keep going to your 60, 70, and the day you die, you might still only be have improved by 10%. But for Allah, that class is at 100% because of the effort that you gave. Because in this life, the only thing we can do is do an effort. Result only comes from Allah. Result only comes from Allah. Try to recite the Quran properly. And second of all, try to understand it. Even if it's just one word. In this month of Ramadan, make it a habit to start reciting the translation of the Quran. Or get a commentary of the Quran. One such book which no home should be without is Ma'riful Quran by Mufti Shafi Usmani. It's a commentary and an understanding of the Quran that is second to none. It is so simple, yet it is so beautiful and comprehensive that even a lay person can open it and not be lost. And they can start to get an introduction and start understanding the Quran, start journeying through the Quran, start appreciating the Quran. Every person should have, even if it's the English translation or the Urdu translation or whatever translation you can get it in, get Ma'riful Quran. If not, at least get a translation of the Quran in your language and try and understand just some of the words of the Quran. Having the right attitude, knowing that the Quran is a very, very complex kalam. And just by reading a translation, you're not going to suddenly be able to understand exactly what it says. You're not going to become the next mufti or the next sheikh and start giving fatwas and start giving misquotations of the Quran because you're misquoting Allah. Be very careful of that. Not with that attitude. But open the Quran to say whatever words I can understand, whatever little I can understand, let me open my heart to the Quran with that intention that Allah will open the Quran to me. And let it go to my heart. Even if it's just one word that I understand in the whole month. I'm trying my effort, Allah, you will take me further. Maybe by this effort, one day you will let me understand the Quran in its actual language that it was revealed. I know of many people who started reciting the Quran just out of a genuine love in translation. And today, they can translate any ayah of the Quran up by heart because of the Arabic, how fluid it is. That's where Allah took them, because of the one effort that they started. So with that right intention, and knowing that if you ever get stuck, if you don't understand something, ask your scholars. Ask the ulama. Don't misunderstand it, don't misquote it, don't create more fitna. And if you don't understand it, if you can't go to anyone else, keep it to yourself. But with that right attitude, with that sincere attitude, open the Quran, open the translation, which you can get on your phone, which you probably have in your shelf already. Or there's a bookstore just round the corner, or just opposite, like the one we have opposite the office, that will give you a translation of the Quran in any language you want. Go to the website, donatequran.com, a partner of the Al-Imdaad Foundation, and get a free copy of the Quran in any language that you can speak. In any language that you can speak. It is available for you. Take that and start reciting whatever you can with the open intention to start understanding the Quran. Because the moment you open your heart to the Quran, you will start to fall in love with the Quran. And you will start to be of those who never wants to put the Quran down. You will be taken in by the Quran. The Quran will become a virtual reality headset for you. The moment you open those pages, the moment you start reciting, you're in a different dimension altogether. You don't understand what it means when you hear those stories that the Sahaba are reading Salah and reading Quran, and they don't even know if something will bite them or harm them or touch them or walk past them. They won't even realize, because they're literally in a different dimension. When they're hearing about Musa splitting the sea, they're seeing it. It's like as though they're there. The words become in front of them. Jannah comes in front of them. Jahannam comes in front of you when you start reading the Quran like this. And you might never reach that point, but you'll die trying, and inshallah ta'ala, Allah will definitely show you that. That's the effort that you have to make. Open your heart to the Quran. And the same thing that is not going to be the same for everyone. There might be one thing which makes me fall in love with the Quran. There might be another thing that makes you fall in love with the Quran. Every one of us has something that the Quran is uniquely attracted us to. We have, for example, the great Caliph of Islam and the great Sahabi, one of the greatest and the mightiest of the Khulafa Rashideen, Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the person who we look up to. Look at what the Quran does to transform his heart. He is a person who at one time is using his strength against Islam. He is using his strength to almost hurt and oppress the Muslims. And at this time, our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will make a dua, asking Allah that there are two people who are very strong and who are using their strength against Islam. Ya Allah, whichever one is better from them, guide him and grant Islam's strength through him. Either Abu Jahl bin Hisham or Umar ibn Khattab. And as a result of that dua, Allah chooses Umar ibn Khattab. But how? This same Umar ibn Khattab, he is walking one day and he sees the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying the Salah and reciting Quran outside the Kaaba, out in the Haram of the Masjid al-Haram. He goes and he is hiding behind the cloth of the Kaaba, as though you're hiding behind a curtain. And whilst he is there, he is listening to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite the Quran. And whilst he is listening to this, he says, wow, he's mesmerized by the Quran. And he says, this is the best poetry I have ever heard. What happens then? He's sucked in by the beauty of the Quran. He's listening to it. He doesn't want to move. And when he says to it in his heart, remember, he's hiding behind the cloth. No one knows that he is even there. He says to himself in his heart, no one knows he's even there. But in his heart, in that hiding mode, he says in his heart, what beautiful poetry. I have never heard anything like this. I've never heard poetry better than this. And the next verse that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to say to him, وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَاعِرٍ, this is not the word of a poet. And he is petrified, thinking, how? No one even knows that I am here. How did he read my mind and say that what was in my heart? This must be the word of a sorcerer or a soothsayer. وَلَا بِقَوْلِ كَاهِنٍ, this is not the word of a soothsayer. Very next verse. Then he's going to ask the question, dumbfounded, how is this Quran reading me? The Quran is supposed to be a recitation, but it seems to be reading me. It seems to be talking to me. What is this? How is this? Where is this coming from? Tanzilun min Rabbil Alameen. It is a revelation from the Lord of the worlds, coming down, descending. Every question he asks, the answer he gets. Now he's completely dumbfounded. He can't take any more. He runs home and he's thinking, Islam is the truth. This Quran is the truth. I have to become Muslim. But look what happens. Shaitan comes to him and says, you want to become Muslim? Look at the difficulty. This Islam only brings difficulty. How can you be a Muslim? Whoever becomes Muslim, look around you. They only face difficulty. The rich become poor. The happy become sad. This is what Shaitan is saying to me. Islam brings difficulty. Don't accept Islam. So every time his heart comes towards Islam, he thinks about it again. Shaitan says the same. And like this, he keeps delaying it. Until one day, he is taken aback by the situation in Makkah. And he vows that he doesn't mind if he is killed, but he will go and he will, ma'adallah, kill the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his own hands, even if he dies in the process, to stop this thing which he sees as so heinous. He goes with his sword out, and when the people see, as the story goes, he is then directed towards his sister. He goes towards his sister. He goes towards the house and he hears Hazrat Khabbab radiallahu anhu reciting the Quran. He goes in his anger. He hits his sister. He hits his brother-in-law. And as the long story comes short, eventually he sees the blood on his sister. He reacts to his actions. He calms down and he asks his sister to see that Quran that was being recited. Where is these words that you were reciting? Now the Quran is finally going to be placed in front of him. The last time he was coming in contact with the Quran, he was dumbfounded as the Quran was talking to him. It wasn't just a book, it wasn't just words, it wasn't just saying or recitation. It was something that was talking to him directly in his heart. The words of Allah were communicating with him. Now he is in contact with the Quran once again. He opens this script that he has in front of him. He reads the Quran, and what's the very, very first words that he's going to see? Taha ma anzalna alayka al-Quran litashqa. We have not revealed this Quran to bring difficulty upon you. Subhanallah. The one thing that was in his heart, I can't accept Islam because it's difficulty. Let me answer that for you as well. And now you can imagine his state. He is completely taken aback. He keeps reading until eventually he can't. He stands up, he goes to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and becomes Muslim. And he goes to every one person who was persecuting the Muslim and says, I'm Muslim, do you have a problem with that? And not one person has the audacity to say to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, why have you become Muslim? He can go to the haram and do what no one else could. He could pray salah, and when he does his taslim at the side, the people that were even staring at him would run away with fear because of the power of this person. A heart that was transformed by the Quran. That's one miracle that was something personal to us, Umar radiallahu anhu. But when we open our heart to the Quran, we will see a unique miracle that will attract us. I know of a person who lives amongst us in this century of ours that became Muslim just by reading one verse of the Quran. One verse. He was a person who was looking for religion. Who was a person who wanted everything to be scientific and rational. And he was looking for a religion that wasn't proven wrong by the evidence of science. He takes a copy of the Quran. He opens the Quran, and what's the first word he reads? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. So he sees, okay, this is the word of Allah, the one Almighty God, who is the most gracious and the most merciful. But who is he? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. He is, all praise is to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Stop there. Worlds. There's an S on the end. That means plural, meaning more than one, meaning there's another planet. Who could have known 1400 years ago that there's more than one Earth? We only know now that there's 9 planets, and we're still debating whether Pluto is a planet. We're not even sure. How did this person know? This has to be from Allah. This has to be the truth. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. One verse was enough to connect to his heart and make him Muslim. How many times have we recited that same verse and not felt anything? Say Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. That is the power of the Quran. If we only open our hearts to the Quran, because the very beginning of the Quran starts from a connection with the heart. We know of the story when Jibreel alayhi salam comes and descends upon the blessed cave of Hira, where our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will start going from the age of 37. From the age of 37, he starts visiting this cave frequently, amongst others. This was his favorite. He is in seclusion, doing almost a set of muraqabah, where you close your eyes, you look in deep into your heart, and you just reflect around you. Just think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about His creation. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in this state for 3 years. He will go and just do this. And after 3 years, when he is in the cave of Hira, when he is 40 years old and 6 months later, 40 years he becomes in the month of Rabiul Awwal. In the month of Ramadan, 6 months later, he is in this cave, and Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel, will descend upon him and come as a brightening light, which the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is frightened by, shocked by, startled by, petrified by, and he can't even make out what it is yet. And this beautiful voice says to him, Iqra. And the Rasul doesn't know what it means. So he says, Ma ana biqari. Fighting for his life. Ma ana biqari. I am not a reciter. I am not learned. I cannot read. And this is a situation which has been prophesied from years before, in the books before. And to this day, the Quran tells us that the Quran and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was prophesied years before, centuries before, decades before, from every prophet. But even in this time, when we live in a time where there is no such scripture available to us from the old times, where we only have the last remaining remnants, even then we have the prophecies that tell us of this same incident. When you look at the prophet Isaiah, you go to the Old Testament of the Bible, you go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 29, verse number 12. You'll open there and you'll see that the prophet Isaiah is telling his people about a prophecy of a very great book to come. And he says the book will be given to him, to whom it will be said, read. And he will say, I am not learned, I cannot read. That is the prophecy of this great incident, the preparation centuries before of this moment that happened in this month that we are being blessed to witness. And in that moment, the angel is going to say to him, Iqra. And the Rasul will reply, Ma ana biqari. I am not learned, I cannot read. The angel then will not continue. He will stand up, grab the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and hug him so tight, so hard, that the Rasul will feel like an electric shock going through him when the heart of Jibreel alayhi salam connects with the heart of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that one embrace. And it will be so strong that in his own words, it felt like the life is being sucked out of him because of the power and the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was going inside of him, so that he could be ready, so that he could have the power that he needs for his mission. And eventually Jibreel alayhi salam lets go of him because he was so much shaken, he lets go, and the Rasul is on the ground again in this cave. He says once again, Iqra, and the same reply. He then commences again and grabs the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam again, same embrace, heart to heart. The power is going within the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam again. The same feeling again, where life is almost being sucked out of the Rasul because of the power that is going inside. He is then again let go, and for the third time, then he will say, Iqra. Same reply. Third time he will do it again, and then he will say, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqa al-insana min alaq, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. He will say, read, recite in the name of your Lord, who created human beings from an alaq. Read, and your Lord is most generous. At this moment, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam now, because of the connection of the two hearts, the knowledge is within him. He almost has now a one-to-one connection. He knows what it means without even being explained. I don't have to read something written, I have to recite this out loud. And he will repeat the words, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqa al-insana min alaq, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. This is how the Quran descends. This is how the power, it starts off from a heart-to-heart connection. You need to open your heart. You need to find a teacher whose heart, who has the Quran, and they can descend it into you as a next step. First open your heart to the Quran. That will come in the next step, inshallah. Make it an intention. And it is at this moment that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in that state. And you can ask, Jibreel Islam is an angel. He is an angel. When he comes, what does he say first? He says, Iqra. Then he stops. He does something. He says, Iqra. He stops. He does something. Iqra. Stops. Does something. Then he starts again. Iqra. Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Khalaq al-insana min alaq. Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Now you have to ask yourself the question. When you are reciting this, do we ever stop at Iqra and say, Salam alaikum, going, Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq? We never do that. We can't do that. Because we can't stop in between a verse of the Quran and do anything else other than the recitation of the Quran. We have to finish the ayah before we can do anything. So why then there's an angel, when a human being knows he can't do that? Why then there's an angel that la ya'surullah ma'amarahum? They never ever go against what Allah tells them. They never err, they never make a mistake. Except what Allah wills for them to do, they only do that. In the command of Allah, they don't sway. So why then would he stop in between an ayah? Because a point to note, what does he do when he stops in the ayah? he as an angel had a role to one, tell the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam who he is. Which he does. When the Rasul comes out of the cave, he is there telling him that he is the Messenger of Allah. He has to reveal the first ayat of the Quran to him, which he does eventually. And he has to embrace the Rasul, connect his heart and download all of this power into the Rasul's heart, into the Rasul's body, to prepare him for the mission coming. But why does he start doing the revelation first and in between cut short and then start giving these hugs? Why? Because at that moment when Jibreel himself is standing in front of the greatest of creation, in front of our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, delivering the Quran into the heart of the Rasul, the only thing strong enough and great enough to hold the Quran, to feel its power coming down from the heavens, from the Lawh Mahfuz, from the preserved tablet, down onto earth, the only thing powerful enough and strong enough to yield that Quran, the heart of the Rasul is there ready to take the first verses of the Quran. But for Jibreel alayhi salam, it's something completely different. He's been waiting for billions and trillions of years to be in front of the most beloved creation to him and to all of the angels. And now finally he's in front of him. How can he possibly hold back from hugging the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's why this happens. That's that beautiful moment that takes place according to the ulama in different dates, different opinions, but one opinion according to the 17th of Ramadan. Another opinion could be the 21st or any of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. In the last odd nights of Ramadan especially. That's what happened on that night, which we are told in the Surah of Al-Qadr. On the night of Laylatul Qadr, that's what happens. This whole month is centered around the Quran. It became a month of speciality when Allah chose it to be the month of new beginnings, the month of the ultimate beginning, the month of the beginning of Islam, the month of the beginning of the revelation of the final Kalam, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, His word, to the most greatest of creation. And then we can have the audacity to come in this month and think we can simply recite through it like a Ferrari and just take it off as a box. When this whole month is centered around the Quran. Everything you do comes from that Quran. You fast, you pay your zakat because of that Quran. So this whole month has to be centered around the Quran. That's the beauty of this Quran. And trust me, you can love the Quran if you give it that opportunity, when you open your heart. And like I said, it's going to be different for every one of you. Find something about the Quran. But you will never find it unless you stand up, you rise and do something. What's the very first revelation given to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam after he leaves the cave of Hira? After that revelation, what's the very first words given to him? In Surah Al-Muddathir, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Kum fa'andir, rise and warn. You need to rise first. You can't just sit around. Rise, get up, do something about it. Open your heart to the Quran. Go find somewhere where you can learn it. Start opening the Quran and find that thing that you love. Because when you find that one thing that you love about the Quran, you will never ever stop loving it. You'll never want to put it down. This Quran is something that attracts to everyone in a different way. We spoke about the story of Hazrat Umar. Look at another example. Find me another book or another word that has been preserved like the Quran has. You take 10 people in a row, whisper something into the first person's ear, and then see how it comes past. When it is passed from ear to ear, when it comes to the last ear, see how it's been changed. That's where we get the statement, Chinese whispers. But now think, if those few words couldn't be preserved through only 9 or 10 mouths, 9 or 10 minds, 9 or 10 hearts, in a period of a few moments, how then is over 6,000 ayat preserved over 1400 years, over billions and trillions of hearts coming down over time, and yet we even know where to put each vowel mark. How is that anything that a human being can do? That's the power of the Quran. And find me another book, find me another word, find me another speech that can give you 10 messages in one sentence, that can give you 10 different understandings from the one same word, that can attract to 10 different audiences uniquely to them. We know we have such a thing as a target audience. I'm speaking in English right now because I have a target audience of English. But no matter what I do, I can't attract or I can't relate to a person in China or in India or maybe in Saudi Arabia because they don't speak my language. But if there was to be a live translation of what I'm saying and what we're saying right now, they might be able to understand and get a gist of what we're trying to get at. but we will never be able to relate to them as uniquely as we can to our own English audience. A light joke on this topic. Like I said, I'm Gujarati, but I also have a lot of friends who are from another part of the Indian country, and they are known as Konknis. Now, a lot of my Konkani friends, when they greet us, in fact, the very first time, one of my close friends, his name is Brother Sarfraz, he lives in London now, and I'm hoping he's listening to this. I like to tell him that I love you, my brother, for the sake of Allah, and I can't wait for you to come back to our city of Blackburn, a town of Blackburn. He's a Konkani, and one of the very first times I met him and I met his parents, they greeted me with the way they say "How are you?" in Konkani. Now, this is from the same country, and their language originates from the same place Gujarati originates. It all starts from Urdu. So we have our different strands of the same language. So they use some of the same words as well. So now he comes up to me and he says, to greet me, he says, "Bes Howdy." And I said, "Sorry, what?" He says, "Bes Howdy." And I said, "What are you saying?" He says, "I'm saying, how are you?" in my language. Now the thing is, in my language, those two words, Bes and Auni, mean fat cow and come here. So if you say to someone Bes Auni in my language, you're saying, "Come here, you fat cow." The same words, same country, completely different meaning. I can never relate to that word how a person from that region of the same country can. Yet, you have a Quran that has the same Arabic words, the same verses, same passages. But when it is translated and when the understanding is brought to thousands of different audiences in different times, places, ages and countries, and yet it will uniquely attract and relate to each one. What's an example of this? Surah Al-Ikhlas. Surah Al-Ikhlas. What is one of the commentators' stories of revelation for this? What's the Sha'n al-Wurud, Sha'n al-Nuzul, regarding the matter of how it was revealed? You have a Christian deputation from Najran that is going to come to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they're going to stay in the Masjid Nabawi with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, learning about Islam and learning about this new messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're going to ask him, "What is your concept of God? What do you believe about Allah?" And at this moment, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to be told, "Qul, say, Huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad." Now, who is the audience? It's an Arab delegation from a place known as Najran that are followers of the Christian faith, who believe in everything we believe up to Isa alayhi salam. But they will believe in their concept of God some things which we don't. They will believe that Allah can be one, yet they can have a second and a third in a trinity. They believe that a man who comes into existence and can go out of existence at a particular time can be also God. A spirit that was created can be limited to time and space, that can also be God. God can be a son that is begotten. God can be a father that begets. And God can be in the shape and the form of his creation, something that the mind can comprehend. So now these people who believe this, they have this concept of God. They will come and ask the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "What do you believe about Allah?" And now you have to tell them exactly what we believe in contrast to what they believe, so we can relate to them like none other. So the very first words will say, "Kul huwallahu ahad." Say he is in their minds. Shama Israhilu idnohi ila ihad. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse number 4. From the 10 commandments, the very first commandment given in the Torah. The Torah, the last remnants of the Torah, are the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These first 5 books make up what the Jewish rabbis and the scholars will tell us is the last remnants of the Torah. In there, in the 6th chapter, the 4th verse, you will see Musa a.s. narrating the 10 commandments. And what's the first commandment? That Isa a.s. will also tell them in the New Testament. He will tell Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, this is the first commandment. Shama Israhilu idnohi ila ihad, Allahu ahad. Same words, 2 different languages. Aramaic, Hebrew, Arabic. Same words they are hearing. And they know straight away this is a message relating directly to us. It's been revealed specifically for us. Second thing, Allahu Samad. Allah was there, He is absolute eternal. He is beyond time and space. He created time, He created space. He is beyond time, He is beyond space. No time can contain Him, no space can confine Him. That's who Allah is. So any human being, any spirit or any creation that depends on time and space that are at the beginning and end can't be Allah. Be it man, be it son, be it angel, be it spirit. Third of all, lam yalid wa lam yulad. He does not beget, neither is he begotten. He does not have a son underneath him, neither was he someone that came from a father above him. No father, no son. Allah and His Messenger Isa. There's no father and son. And lastly, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And any creation can never resemble Allah. Anything, there is no likeness of Him on the entire earth. He is one unique. There is no likeness of Him on the entire earth. So any creation, any man, any spirit comprehensible in the earth cannot be Allah. 4 verses which completely sum up the Islamic concept of God. Because other than that, we believe in the same Allah. We say we believe in the same Allah as Jesus and Moses. We believe in the same God. We believe in the Lord of the Bani Israel, the children of Israel. We believe in that same God who revealed the Injil and the Torah. So here's how we differ. Here's the contrast. If you amend this, it's the same concept of God. A comprehensive yet beautifully perfect answer that leaves no more questions behind. They are satisfied and they're happy with this answer. And they feel as though this revelation has been given specifically for them. But now look at this. 1400 years later, you're going to have an atheist who lives in the United Kingdom and who doesn't believe in any of the scriptures, be it the Bible, be it the Old Testament, be it the New Testament, be it the Quran, be it anything. And he says Allah doesn't even exist. How does this surah now tell him what we believe about God? How? Let's see. He's an atheist who's saying God is none, there is none, no God. They're going to say, how can Allah be? Because who created Allah? When did He come in the timeline? When did He come into existence? When is His beginning? When is His end? We can go back to the beginning of the creation, but then eventually we get to Allah. So who created Allah? What was there before Allah? Then they're going to say, yeah, but look, there's so many different gods. There's a God that's a father, there's a God that's a son, there's a God that's Krishna, there's a God that's an idol, there's a God that's half human, half elephant, there's a God that's a human being, there's a God that's my next door neighbor that says he's God. So who's God? Why does God have a family? And which one is the Godhead? Which one, if they all have the same powers, then how come one hasn't destroyed the earth yet? And second of all, if God exists, then why can't we sense Him? Why can't we see Him? Why can't we smell Him? Why can't we taste Him? Why can't we feel Him? Why can't we hear Him? Look at how Surah Ikhlas answers them. They say God is none, we say God is one. Hu Allahu Ahad. They say, when did Allah come into existence? We say, how can you ask that question? When He created time and space. If there is no time and there is no space, how can He be confined or contained in a space? Where is He? How can you answer that question? Because He created space. Take away space, where is He contained? He's infinite. He created time. If there was no time, where the question arise when He began and when He ended? He is absolute and eternal. He was before time and space. He created time and space. No time can confine Him, no space can contain Him. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. For the Christian, this was perfect. No father that begotten, and no son that was begotten. But now how about the question that the atheist will give you? Human beings, aunties, uncles, families. You have in some religions whole families, husband and wife, of the husband which is God, the wife which is God, the son which is God. For example, in the Hindu tradition, you have the story of the Godhead who goes out, and whilst he is out, his wife is having a bath. She rubs off the dirt from her body and then molds this into a human, and then says, this is our son, and breathes life into it. When the Godhead comes back, he sees this and says, who is this imposter? So he goes and kills him, chops his head off. The wife then comes back and says, that was a son that I made for us. So he goes and finds the first animal he can, sees an elephant, chops off the head, puts it on this son and says, yeah, right, he's got a head as a replacement, let's give life back into him. Father, son, and wife. All gods. Then you have this question. Who is God? How does Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad answer this? Well, simple. If there is no God above Him, no father, there can be no one besides Him. And if there is no one underneath Him, there can be no one alongside Him. No brothers, no sisters, no aunties, no uncles, no husbands, no wife. There is no one above Him, there is no one underneath Him, therefore there is no one around Him. He is only one and only. No father, son, uncle, auntie, husband, wife, nothing. He is the only one. If there's nothing above Him, there can be nothing around Him, no aunties and uncles. There's nothing underneath Him, there can be no nephews, no sons, sisters, cousins, wives, nothing. There's no one above Him, no one underneath Him, no one around Him. He is only one. And the last question. We say, how can God exist? Because we can't smell Him, see Him, feel Him, see Him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Nothing on earth that is comprehensible is Allah. If you could see Him, if you could smell Him, if you could hear Him, if you could feel Him, it wouldn't be Allah. Because nothing that is sensible to the senses on earth is Allah. That's why you can't. He is absolutely unique towards your senses. Same words, same revelation, yet it answers the same question. as though it is specifically revealed for those people, for that audience. Who could do that? Which human being? Now when you're realizing these things, you think, wow, just look at the Quran. Look how amazing it is. And yet, we've lived our entire life without knowing this. But we've recited this same surah over 100 to 1,000 times in our salah. Some of us will be reciting the Traweeh at home and reading the last 10 surahs. You've read it every day, twice. And yet, we didn't know what it meant. That's just one way you can fall in love with the Quran. Find what you love about the Quran. Appreciate the Quran and center this whole month around the Quran. And inshallah ta'ala, we hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the love, the understanding, and the ability, the tawfiq and the hidayah to act upon this Quran al-Kareem so that it becomes a hujjah, a witness for us. Because remember one thing, we talked yesterday regarding what the statement of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. Now look at this verse of the Quran. The same Quran that we don't read and we don't understand has told us again and again and again that on the day of Qiyamah, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي, Oh my Lord, إِنَّ قَوْمِي اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. That my people took this Quran as a mahjura, something that was far away, something far and distant. They treated it as something distant. That's the Rasul complaining to Allah that they took the Quran as something far away in distance. It was always in the back of their minds, in the back of their drawers, at the bottom of their ab drawers. That's all it was for them. And look at the words as well. Hada, this Quran. If something is close, he said this. If something is far, he said that. He didn't even say that Quran. He didn't even say the Quran. He said this Quran, this. It's so close, it's right here. But they took it as something so far. It was in the palm of your hand. And yet you treated it as something so far. That Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam simply looked to the sky, and as we mentioned yesterday, the whole world can be put to one side and the direction can be changed by his look, is now a witness against those people who left the Quran, who did hijrah from it, mahjura. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us and make us of those who the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be a witness for, who grants us shafa'ah, and for who the Quran will be an intercession, for who the Quran will be an intercession, and for who the Quran will be a hujjah for us all. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. May Allah give us true understanding of what Sufyaan has just mentioned. May Allah give us true love for the Quran, and may Allah give us the ability to understand the words of the Quran. This is the month of the Quran. Let's make the most